Hello. I reckon we might get it started. We're on Permie time, but we're actually on time. Within 5 minutes is on time. Anything after that is permaculture time. Welcome everyone back to the Big Fig. My name's Kim. I'm on the committee for Permaculture SA, and I will be the MC for this awesome panel. I'm actually really excited to be here to listen to this because I've just been running around, so I actually don't get to listen to many talks. And I'm really excited that there's 3 speakers within one talk because I actually get multiple in one. And I love it when we have a system like this because we get different perspectives. And one of the cool things about permaculture is that there's so many different ways to approach it and to apply it that having different speakers gives you a bit of a better broad overview with different perspectives. And yeah, so really stoked about this. We'll just crack into it. Well, I'm very excited to welcome the first speaker here. What's that?
Were you looking for my name?
I mean, I was going to look for your name. We literally just met, and I was going, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, regardless of how I pronounce it. So I'll just sort of mumble it as if I know what I'm... Chaitanya. Chaitanya? Yeah, close enough. Close enough is good enough for me. But yeah, if you'd like to come up, we'll hand over the microphone, and then I'll turn over the laptop.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session when I know that you had options. Really beautiful to see you all here on Permaculture. My name is Chaitanya Shettigara. So you know. I come from Canberra, which is Ngunnawal country. I'm happy to be here to talk to you today about an app that I'm developing with some people to help you plan and manage your own piece of permaculture paradise. Is it going to work? I think I'm going to have to do the next slide, Tim, thing. Oh, it works, okay. So this story starts in 2019. I was in the middle of building my new home. It was in a greenfields area on highly compacted, degraded soil full of construction waste. And I wanted to design the garden that was going to complement this efficient home that we were building. I wanted a garden that was productive, sustainable, and beautiful. And I was planting a food forest, so I was trying to do all of the things, you know, select the plants that maximize the harvest, co-locate plants that have similar needs, work out how to incorporate poultry into the system. And I also wanted it to be beautiful. This was the goal. This is the edible landscaping guru, Rosalind Creasy's garden. I poured over her book like the Bible, wanting to achieve that. But I was doing the PDC, my permaculture design certificate. It was all making sense in pieces, but I found it overall really overwhelming. I was this woman. And yeah, it was really struggling to put all of the pieces together. Came up with something, started to implement it, and then I was starting to design gardens for my friends as well. I have a dream of a side hustle or a career change to be a landscape designer instead. And every time I was this woman. So I wished I had an easy way to manage all of that information. And I know that I'm not the only person who feels this way, because all over social media and just in the discussions I have, I see people who are asking the same kind of questions. Are there apps that can help me? Does anyone have recommendations? What can I do? I've pulled one from the Milkwood Instagram. I pulled one from the Australian Permaculture Convergence from a few years ago, but still, so I know that I'm not alone in this need. And so I thought, you know, a lot of what I was trying to do was really manage information and work through algorithms. And I was looking at the existing solutions. A lot of people I talk to use books and pens and paper. Technical solutions are mostly in the form of databases of this information, but at the end of the day, people still have to work through it all in their heads. Some of the technical solutions provide a reminder service. There's a few visual planning tools, but none actually help with planning or managing the complexity of putting together a system like this. And none of the planners that exist incorporate Australian native plants and incorporate and recognise First Nation wisdom. So I thought I can use my own technical background and work out how we can use computers to help. So developing a guild for your food forest is an algorithm, right? So you start with your tree. What are the pests? What deters those pests? That tells you a few plants that you can plant. What are the predators for those pests? Gives you a few more plants. What are the nutrients that your system requires? A few more plants that you can put in. That's an algorithm that your computer can help with. Similarly, generating groups of companion plants is essentially a graph partitioning problem. You need to have the connections between the different plants, whether they're good companions or whether they're antagonists. But you don't have to do that all in your head. There are algorithms that can help with that. Not only can this be done with the existing wisdom that's out here, like X is a companion of Y, but you can also use the attributes of the plants to generate those relationships just based on those attributes. And so, yeah, you can collect those plants together. By including in my plant database the planting interval, then the lifespan of the plant and how big it grows, can automatically generate a succession planting plan. And using this, generate crop rotation plans and plans that will help people have a continual harvest. So this is my idea for the app. So something that's easy for people to use no matter where they are in their journey to help them implement all of these things. So I have a couple of use cases. The first is a food forest designer. So this is kind of where I was at in 2019 when I started this talk. So it's someone who's fairly familiar with permaculture principles and trying to plan their food forests. So they kind of get it, but trying to manage the information. So you'll be able to draw a plot, doesn't need to be rectangular. Use the exact measurements on it. The app will be able to calculate the areas that you're talking about. Can put contour lines on it and mark assets like the external environment, the input sources, your outputs. Also set your climate zone, so this thing will give you advice that's specific to your own climate. Add in hardscape features, so the building was there on the first slide, a dwelling, but like your paving, walls. Also mark your water sources and how it's going to flow through the landscape. Put in different garden elements, so in this make-believe one, the orange parts are perennial garden beds, and there's a couple of annual veggie beds and lawn. Put all of this in. And then this is the fun part. So the user, this has turned up pretty small, so I'll just tell you what's on there. So they're searching, they're like, I want to plant a cherry tree. And they'll be able to search through the database, which will be really big and have a lot of information about the plants that are in there. So the fields for the plants will include their scientific and common name, where they belong in the food forest, so their food forest layer, the lifespan of the plant, including things like the growth rate, so that there's a time dimension to this garden planning, allowing people to think about stuff like planting their nursery plants. So in the last session on food forests, like putting in an acacia, that will be a nursery plant for like a secondary plant that's slower growing. the uses of that plant, whether it's edible or accumulator, even if it's just ornamental, its place of origin, harvest interval, maintenance tasks at different times of year, and even notes about its appearance and morphology so that people can also think about how this is going to look. And they'll be able to add a scale model to their plot. So another thing is that there will be a comprehensive pest and disease database as well. So straight from the users, if they want to put in a cherry tree, they'll see that there are pear and cherry slugs that can be a problem for that, and there will be maintenance tasks incorporated to help mitigate that. It'll tell them right there in the app that if they can attract lacewings, then that will help deter or predate upon the pear and cherry slug. The app will also tell you if you're trying to plant things that are really incompatible with each other, so something that hates wet feet next to something that likes bogs, for example. Or if you're trying to put acid-loving blueberries next to your alkaline-loving asparagus. So it'll just flag that maybe that's not the best idea. So in this way, the user will be able to plan out their whole garden, and this will generate a calendar for them that tells them what time of year they should plant different things, when they can expect to get a harvest, so they can see whether they're getting a harvest year round. The plant database means that if they notice a gap, they can easily just find a plant to fill that gap. And also keep a diary of the maintenance tasks that are required, so they can see whether they're planting things that have a lot going on in a particular month, say. Also, there'll also be a monthly view. So say they've put these cherry, apples and mandarins on their wish list. It'll tell you in August, in cool mountain areas like where I am, that you should plant them at that time of year. And if you already have a mandarin in your garden, you can expect to be harvesting around August. And it will also have maintenance tasks that you should do at this time of year. So people can get reminders on that. And also the maintenance tasks will have this sort of duration that it will take to complete that. A question that I was often asked when I was designing other people's gardens was like, how much maintenance this is going to be. Well, I can plan out their garden and say, well, you're going to be doing 2 hours in August and 5 hours in September. Sorry, it's busy that time of year. And really track how difficult it's going to be. So that was, the use case for a food forest designer. I'll just let you admire this slide for a little bit longer. Okay, cool. The next user journey is a veggie grower. So what I'm imagining here is a beginner gardener just wants to grow some veggies in their backyard but doesn't know where to start. Doesn't necessarily know or care about organic gardening methods. All they know is that they want some dirt and some tomatoes. So the app will guide them through some principles of organic gardening. It's sort of permaculture by stealth to encourage these kinds of methods and guide them through planning their veggie patch. So that's the list of vegetables that I've already got in the database now. I know you can't read them, sorry, but there's about 100 or so. So this beginner novice user will be able to just go through and like, yeah, I want to grow that, I want to grow that, yeah, that sounds tasty, and just tick through all the things that they want. Be able to say how many veggie beds they have. If they've put in a full garden plan, then the app might already know about that. And so then based on this information, that's really not visible, but it's saying that they have these 2 beds, which are the vertical columns. So in one bed, the rows are a summer crop, and so bed 1 on the left, bed 2 on the right, summer, winter, and it's just divided it up into plants that grow well together, and it's created a crop rotation plan for them based on the time of year. And this would all be based on the climate zone that they've nominated as well. So there's a calendar view as well. So in April, where we are now, it's telling them what they should plant in which bed. Oh, something I forgot to mention is that it would be really easy for when they've put in their spinach or their radishes to add to the diary to say that they've done that. It'll tell them what they can expect to be harvesting now, and also have maintenance tasks. So it says, well, once you've harvested your cabbage plant, pull that out, and it knows that now there's space that's available for planting in that bed. So yeah, so I've talked through a few of the features that I think would be useful for those two use cases. Other features are there's this expansive database, there's an easy to use visual design tool for people to use, these guided design tutorials, which I've been thinking a lot about permaculture education and how this is incorporated. I think about this as just-in-time learning, and with the maintenance task coming up, it's giving them some delayed repetition to learn these principles. A journal to track activities, observations and harvests. A social element so that people can share their experiences with their peers. Also say when they have harvest to share with each other, sharing the surplus. Something that I haven't written up there is that as people are tracking all of these activities and their observations and their harvests, I feel like that information can be aggregated and used for scientific research into the efficacies of the work that they're doing, when they know what time of year they're planting and how much they're harvesting, and they're seeing these pests. We can use all of that to further our scientific knowledge. I'm also intending a professional version where we'll be able to import or input the site topography, do some hydrodynamic modelling so that people can plan some passive irrigation, import weather service data to really personalise it, and also have 3D rendering. That's probably a way down the track. And another use case that I'm hoping is that a landscape designer would be able to design this for their client using a professional version, but then hand over the calendar to their client so that their client can maintain it, because I think that's a big risk for the success of the garden. So who am I working with? So there's me. There's Matt Chen, who's our technical director. He's a software developer, and he has a particular interest in cybersecurity. I also have a particular interest in cybersecurity, so we'll be pretty keen on the security of all of this data. And Tegan Miller, who's a graphic designer and user interface designer. So far, I've started to develop the plant database. I'm up to about 100 plants now. We've been developing the visual look and feel. So all that I've shown, that's all mock-ups, but what we sort of anticipate this to look like, and setting up the background infrastructure for the app. We've applied for a Canberra Innovation Network grant, which, if we're successful, we'll spend on a web dev to actually implement all of this. So Matt has the skills. I'm a proof of concept kind of girl. Matt has the skills to actually make the back end stuff work, but we need a web dev to be able to do the front end. And yeah, for me, this has been a really inspirational weekend. I have so much to learn, so I'm going to keep doing that and working out how all of these principles can be incorporated into this app. So if you're interested, really love you to get involved. Ways that you could do that is, I would love to hear your feedback on this. Which of these features sound helpful to you? Do you have any ideas for other ones that you would like to see? If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a survey where I ask you lots of questions like that. And the final optional question is for your email address. You know, I do to a mailing list. Once we've developed a minimal viable product, we'll be looking for beta testers, and I'll send that invitation out to that mailing list. I really would like to hear from you if you know about startups, tech startups or otherwise. If you do research to some advice on what this data gathering might look like. Yeah, so chat to me after this or email me at greenthumb.gardenplanner@gmail.com.
Yeah, this week. Yeah, thank you for that appropriate use of technology. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. I recently used GPT to define permaculture, and it was hilarious. You should all do it. So yeah, technology doesn't get used as much. Well, it does get used a lot in farming, and I feel like in permaculture it's sometimes a little bit of a taboo thing sometimes, depending on who you're reading it from, but it's a great use of the tool that's available to us. So I'd like to introduce Susanne to come up, and you can get this party started. And also for being barefoot with me. Thank you.
I love permaculture because you can do a presentation in bare feet. And back in my corporate life, there's no way I would have stood in front of a group of people with bare feet. Can you hear me, or am I yelling? I'm going to take a risk and ask you a question and ask you to share the answer to that question with the person beside you. And the question is something that many of you might have thought about before or have experienced, and the question is, what have you learned from seeing another gardener in their garden? Now, if you could just, we've only got 30 seconds each person, so turn to the person beside you, or if there's three of you, like there is here in the front, what have you learned from another gardener in their garden? Tim? That's it. Yeah, thanks. Can I bring you back together again? That was a mean little 1 minute, wasn't it? How many of you, could I ask, how many of you have actually learned something from another person's garden? That's what the Edible Garden Trail is all about, learning from other people's gardens. And the Edible Garden Trail grew out of a heartbreak for me. It was heartbreak because I couldn't do enough about climate change. I locked myself onto a bulldozer in my 70s up at the Adani mine site, and that was a harrowing experience. I got back to Sydney and I thought, that's not enough. I went to a shareholder meeting that a company that was providing insurance for Adani. That wasn't enough. And I was heartbroken when I saw the Edible Garden, not the Edible Garden Festival, the Garden Festival in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. And they were beautiful, absolutely beautiful, huge gardens, but not a frog to be heard, and not a bee to be seen. And there was the telltale surrounds of all the little ornamental gardens of Roundup. And you could see the dead grass around, and I thought, people are coming up to this festival by the hundreds. Why aren't they seeing something edible? Because when somebody puts in an edible, they stop using poisons. And so the idea kind of emerged. Another heartbreak I felt at the time was the fact that Permaculture Blue Mountains wasn't sharing their wonderful ideas. It was a very small group, and in fact it kind of disbanded over the years. And I wanted to see those wonderful permaculture people sharing their fantastic ideas, their gardens, with people who might not yet have planted their lemon tree, who might be thinking ornamentals. And so I asked around and got a little team of helpers to go with this crazy idea, and I was a bit of a nutter about it. I'd be driving around, I'd see a garden with some screening over a tree, and I'd think, oh, that's a fruit tree. I'd leap out of the car, jump out, knock on the door, and tell them this crazy idea that I'm going to have an edible garden trail. We're going to invite people from all over New South Wales to come and have a look. And the good thing was most people said yes. And then not only that, they told their neighbours or other people who they knew had an edible garden. And before I knew it, I had 40 gardens, and all of them really willing to spend a weekend in their garden sharing their fantastic insights into how they were doing their own garden. I had 40 gardens, but no one to come and look. So I used my previous corporate experience and wrote a whole lot of press releases and got in, because it hadn't been done before, the gardening magazines found it interesting. So garden magazines like Earth Garden and Garden Clubs of Australia all printed my little blurb. And so the information sort of got around, and we had one weekend, and I chose the weekend which was sort of between festivals in the Blue Mountains and where the gardens might be reasonably productive. And so it was a March weekend. And so I even got onto the ABC and their radio show in the morning, the Sydney Morning Herald, and we had 500 people come to our very first festival, and included, yes, I felt like that at the time. I was pretty excited. And a group of people came up from Permaculture Sydney North, I think, in a bus. And before I knew it, they were contacting me and said, how did you go about it? And I said, oh, fantastic, someone else is interested. And I sent them all the information so they didn't have to reinvent the wheel, you know, how to write to the gardeners, how to go about it. And of course, the next year they had a huge trail, being Sydney, but our trail was pretty good. It was 60 kilometres long and 40 gardens. I thought it was pretty good. And in that first year, because it was a bit, you know, I was a bit of a nutter about it, I think. They probably thought I was a total ratbag. Then I wrote to every single school in the mountains. I only got 3 schools that were interested. But because the following year, the first edible garden trail had been such an exciting event, and the whole community was abuzz with it, because people were getting to talk to about each other's gardens, just as you were saying then, how much you've learnt from other people's gardens. The way it worked was people had I'll show you some of the things we used. This was the bunting, very cheap, very quick to make, that everybody had outside their garden. We had a little, you know, those wristbands that people could get, and I've left a few of these around. This was the first very cheap little program that we had. A3 folded to A4, cost very little, and thanks to Bendigo Bank I got a little grant to do this for $1,000. And so it was almost cost-free to do the whole thing. And someone can have this. We had a yellow theme, and each garden had a lovely bright thing like this as well. And people came up for the weekend. It brought people from all over the place, as I mentioned, but it also had people talking to their neighbours about how they were doing it. So in that first year we had 3 schools. The following year, because there was money left over, we offered a grant for any participating school, because we charged $25 for this weekend, and we had money left over. Said any participating schools will get a grant. And so bingo, most of the primary schools following year put their gardens into the trail. And so it's sort of been growing like topsy since then, because there's no limit to the type of garden. In that first year we had 3 little school gardens. We had my little garden, which is a pathetic little attempt at permaculture, but it's mine. And we had some gardens that were only 1 year old. We had some gardens that were commercial gardens. We had everything, the full range. And so people could go through the program, and in this my little A3 folded to 4. I've got a few of these for anyone who might be interested. There's the list of gardens inside, so people could choose whether they wanted to stay in the lower mountains, go to the upper mountains, look at schools, look at community gardens, whatever it was. Oh, by the way, I meant to ask, could you tell me when I've got 3 minutes left? Because there's a little video I want to share with you. And
Yeah, that'd be good.
now, it's now, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, 3 minutes left. Oh, okay. Well, one of the things that... No, I'll show the video. Tim, could I show the video on slide 8, I think it is? Because I could talk underwater about this. Slide 8. Yes, first follower. One of the exciting things about the Edible Garden Trail is it's moving around Australia. After that first one, there was one in Sydney, while we're waiting for this, one in Sydney, one in Adelaide, Melbourne, Hobart, Queensland, Central Coast. It's kind of exploding because it's easy and it's rewarding to the gardeners. We'll get to the movie in a minute. It's rewarding to the gardeners, it's rewarding to the people who come. Ooh. No. Something's happening. That's all right. For anyone, when I do finish at the end of our session, I've got a few of these if you're interested to have a look, and also a few of the more advanced ones, because after the first year, the Blue Mountains Food Co-op took over the organising for me, because that was, once it started, it's up and running, and they did a little book. The Permaculture Central Coast did an Edible Garden Trail this year, lost track of the years. And they did it all online, nothing printed at all. And so each time someone does a new Edible Garden Trail, it's that little bit easier, a little bit more advanced. In that first year, I had to learn how to use social media, total nightmare for someone of my age. And what we found in that first year was 50% from hard copy, newspapers, Gazette, Herald, that sort of thing, and 50% from social media. So we may not get, might be a little video. How are we going for time? No? It was on slide 8 for mine. Found it? First follower it's called. Got it? Yes. That's it. Thank you.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not 2 nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is movers. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone
A bit louder, Tim.
Because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit. But you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
That's enough, Tim. It tells us what we all are. We're either the nutter or the follower or the joiner in. And I saw this happen on the first night of this convergence. Was anyone there on that first night when somebody got up and did a nutty dance? And the next thing, everybody was up in a big circle doing the whole thing. And so we're all versions of one or the other. But the thing is to make it easy to follow. And that was one of the messages there, that it's easy to follow. The Edible Garden Trail is a really easy to follow model, and which is why I think it's now spreading around. And the Blue Mountains Food Co-op and I have been working on a website to make it really easy to follow. And on that website, right from the beginning, I've made available all of the material, the letters to the gardeners, how to have a party for the gardeners, how to make it easy for the gardeners, but how to make it easy for the organisers as well. And so we've put that now up on the website. The website is a nice, easy website, ediblegardentrail.com. ediblegardentrail.com. And on that website, you'll find now, we're trying to put together an e-book as well with examples from all of the other gardens from around Australia, the edible garden trails, not all the other gardens, all the other edible garden trails. And wonderful Costa, who's up there the back, thank you Costa. He's a real ambassador for the edible garden trails, and almost every week I see on Costa's program one of the trails being featured. And I know certainly Permaculture Central Coast was just so in love with you coming up there and supporting them. So I want to thank you for that. And sorry, I haven't finished. Funny that I should be called, be following the Green Thumb. I have a little radio show called Green Thumbs. And I go and interview gardeners every week, and I learn something from them every week, just as I've learned so much over this weekend. So I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for organising.
That video was amazing. Thank you for showing that to me, just introducing that into my life. That could be an advertisement for acid. But it's true, like, it just takes one person to start a movement in any form. Yeah, thank you, that was great. The next presenter is Liz, and we go way back. I've got a draft in my outbox that I've been trying to send in my emails for Liz for about a month now. None of you find this funny, but I find it funny because we've been trying to meet up for a while, and here we are. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. I love that video. I think I saw it about a year ago when I was in the midst of creating, well, I've talked to you about my business and a few of the things I've been doing, and that's so inspirational. So thank you for bringing it back into my life. My name's Liz Sanders. I'm the co-founder of the Food Embassy, and here today to talk to you about one of our flagship programs. So when those slides come up, I'm going to acknowledge firstly that I'm on Paramount country, and I'm a white settler of Irish and Scottish ancestry, and want to really acknowledge the deep wisdom of the First Nations people of this land, particularly as I'll be talking about food, and acknowledge that they're the first sustainable farmers of this land, and we have a lot to learn, and it's always a First Nations first principle for us at the Food Embassy. I need the clicker. Right. Okay. No. Can we have the second slide? As I might have to dance, do interpretive dance. Maybe I do. Oh, there we go. Okay, so just go back. I love this picture of kangaroo grass. Through the work that I've done, I work a lot with First Nations people, and we talk about this beautiful kangaroo grass that used to grow across the Adelaide Plains, the Ghana Plains, and how it was harvested and used as a traditional food source. So I'm from the Food Embassy. We are all about connecting community through food, and in particular supporting and strengthening regenerative local food systems. So my talk today is really about bigger picture stuff, but particularly around community food system literacy, which is a bit of a mouthful, but I've worked a lot in the food space for a very long time, and I grew up on a farm about 3 hours north of here, classic monoculture, grew lots of wheat, had a few cows and sheep, lots of spray. There's this great picture of my brother and I when we were little kids, totally starkers in front of this boom spray. So I think we were both 2 and 4, and yeah, that was the 70s, and it hasn't changed a lot since, unfortunately. But, you know, I'm hopeful of, you know, being here this weekend and also the regenerative movement and what is possible in this space. But, and I get quite excited when, through the work that I've done, I have people coming back and saying things like, I think of my environment as a food environment rather than thinking of my refrigerator as a food environment. And that really inspires me and encourages us to do the work that we're doing. So a lot of this work, as I said, I came from a background in nutrition, so I was doing a lot of work around just telling people what they need to be eating, better healthy choices, all that sort of stuff. And realising after some time that it's really a much bigger picture. This picture is really just to show the mess that we're in the global food system, the industrialised food system that is out there and operates very strongly, with us not in the centre, we're right at the end. And you are all well aware of this, and I'm talking very much to a converted crowd, but I work with mainstream, and we're really trying to put people back in the centre. So what we did in about 2016 was working with Flinders University. They had designed this Food Matters course, which was all about food system literacy. So getting people to understand, to explore the impact of their food choices from an environmental, economic and social and health perspective. So we started about that whole notion of why. Well, because of our well-being, it's linked to the health of our environment, food system. Changing our food system is a really significant way to take action and to support local farmers and producers. So we started off with the course. This is all prior to COVID, of course, 2017-18, and we've run a number of those courses. They're kind of based on a taster to the food system, and then we go through 4 weeks looking at social, health, economic and environment. We actually did a TED talk for this to the Permaculture conference with Todd and Dell. So I'm just going to take you through quickly what some of that background is. So we look through the lenses of social and health, so the whole notion around food insecurity and the frightening statistics around that, you know, we've got more than enough food to feed people in our country, but many people are going hungry, and that those statistics are growing. I just spoke to a colleague the other day in Tasmania, and it's 1 in 3 now in Tassie that are going hungry. So it's frightening, but yeah, there's a lot of food out there. It's a question of how it's getting to people. And I'm sure you're all amazed by the food this weekend, but I think Mel's done an outstanding job of really trying to source local food, but also she's thinking a lot about the waste. So I had a big conversation to her after lunch today about what's going to happen to all that waste as well, all the leftovers. And so, you know, it's a big job to be thinking about all that. The other aspect, of course, is the economic, and this lovely photo of this dear farmer, and as a third-generation white settler farmer, understanding the economic pressures of the farming system. Well, we used to be the price setters, now we're the price takers, and that, particularly for small-scale farmers, there's a lot of pressure, and a lot of them are not getting a living wage. So that needs to change. And then the environmental impacts, and of course we're all very well aware of that, and I don't need to tell any of you about the environmental impacts of our current food system. So if we could just show this video, he's just down there. He's disappeared. He's back. So this is just a little clip showing the impact of our courses that have now actually changed since COVID to a series of events, because the course no longer works. So we've now chunked it up into 4 events. I can keep talking while we wait for that. One of the key things that we work towards is this notion of food citizenship, so we're putting people right in the centre of the food system. So we talk to people about going from being a passive consumer to being an active food citizen. So, and that was a big part of our work, was putting them people right back in the centre of the food system and what they can actually do in that space. Here we go.
Workshops have helped us connect the dots with our community to actually look at who's growing locally, wanting to eat and buy locally, and what we can do to actually contribute to that. Getting some Indigenous perspectives made me realise what perhaps had been lost and how we can acknowledge what can be built in the future. It was great to have some instruction on doing a bit more plant-based eating. Now I'm looking at actually what I can grow myself and then have more of that in the food that we're eating. Since doing the Food Matters program, I have been having a lot more conversations with friends and colleagues around food security. Doing something so meaningful together really made a difference to us. It's an unexpected bonus of doing the workshops.
I learnt more about the community, I learnt more about farming. She had the most amazing corn, and as soon as we got in the car I was like, Mum, we got to grow that corn.
Being on the younger side of the attendees, listening to some of the older people's perspectives and like what they know.
Bring back the power to ourselves in growing our own food, sharing it with people. Building that connection.
Person with a backyard, veggie garden, to like people working on a farm, to people that own a farm.
Feed the girls, milk the goats, pasteurise the milk and bottle up, and so on.
Yep. So it's anything else? Out of 30%. And getting our name out there, getting other producers' names out there, and just making people aware that we are here and that there is other options. Knowing how and why we do things differently is really key for people to be able to understand and make different choices.
When I did the first workshop 2018, it inspired me to create a gardening club in our primary school. It's quite successful, it's still going, and every year more and more kids apply for this program.
I've really enjoyed meeting people who have similar interests. Also little tips like the health benefits from a diverse diet. I've started incorporating that into my diet.
To the centre, it's been an opportunity to showcase the community garden and the fact that even a small garden can be quite productive and feed people. No, it's that real connectedness to the harvest and what happens on your plate. We need to know where our food comes from.
Thank you, Tim. Just go back. Like I said, so since post-COVID, we've now gone into a series of events, and so that's a food and country event, which is probably our most popular event, which really is taking a walk through First Nation lens on sustainable food systems. And keep going. Yeah, so Food Matters today. So food and country being a really popular one, and food freedom with the lovely Lucy there. So where we bring a local farmer into the room and they get to connect and actually have a conversation around growing food, what it really means to talk to the farmer that's actually growing food and some of the realities for small-scale farmers. I'm just going to finish up with really some of the key points, I think, for me about the power of this. We really need a transformation of our food system. One of the key things is having a literate community around why it's really important that people understand food systems. That whole notion of putting, and we've achieved that really in terms of great changes in knowledge, putting food citizenship up front with that, so new ways of thinking about food and building local food communities and thinking about the methodology that we're doing it. And I think First Nations knowledge in that is absolutely critical, and how we can build that into making it transformational, really. I love this quote. It's one of our favourite ones from some key activists in America. Hope is not what we seek in evidence, it is what we become in action together. And following on from that lovely video before, I think it's what is possible as we all can collectively and collaboratively come together. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. You have an event coming up, don't you? Yeah, the one on the Tuesday. Yes. Did you want to tell people about that's open to the public, right?
Not just yet, but it will be. I've got a couple of actually. We do have a food and country event on country, which will be around a Narrandjeri country down at Rattalung, so Basham's Beach, Port Elliot, with Narrandjeri woman Kyla McHughes. That's May the 11th, but the one that Kim's referring to is May the 9th, which will be about strengthening the local Florio food system. So yes, connect with me and you follow us on socials as well. Thanks, Kim, for that plug.
Yeah. I'm useful sometimes. Hey Tim, we've got enough time for some questions if you want to chuck the other mic on. We don't, because we've crammed 3 amazing speakers into an hour, we don't have heaps of time for questions, but still feel free to put your hand up. All right, let's get this party started. Who has a question? Oh, Mark, I'm completely biased and I'm going to go to him first. All right. We have 2 microphones.
My question is to the first speaker, who I'm going to refer to as Dr. Green Thumb, because I can't pronounce your name and I think that's a really cool nickname anyway. I'm really inspired by your app because as someone who does this for a living, what's out there for professional landscapes is way too high tech and it never incorporates food other than something green to designate it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this transforms. I just wonder, when you're talking about some of your irrigation, do you have other forms of irrigation? And obviously I'm biased and talking about wicking beds. Have you thought about putting other sort of raised garden beds in ground, potentially hydroponics, aquaponics, things like that into your system?
Yeah, definitely. So the way I'm imagining it is that the user would be able to plant a whole garden, but they would treat their veggie or their annual bed separately, and that could be in the form of a wicking bed. So I'd like to have associated tutorials with this, and so they say, this is a veggie bed. How do I make a veggie bed? And how to make a wicking bed would be an associated tutorial there that they would be able to use, including things like how to make sure that it's functioning properly, how to make sure you're not getting some anaerobic garbage in your reservoir, that kind of thing, all of that built into it. Yeah.
Awesome. It's a classic Mark to ask a question about wicking beds. We're hand up style for any other questions, and I'll run over to you. Wow, it's almost unheard of. I'm not missing anyone, no? We've got, yeah.
This is just to you, Susanne. I was just checking in around, I'm aware of the Edible Garden Trail video series for Adelaide, and I wondered if that connected in with your own, or is that another one? So essentially it featured, I think it's a series around 6 or 7 different yards, and I wondered whether or not this is something that's morphed out of your idea, or yeah, what connection it might have to your own originating idea.
I think it's morphing from garden trail to garden trail.
Yeah.
And so while I started the first one and passed on the information to Sydney and Central Coast and various places, everyone's sort of doing their own thing from it, which is great. I think it's great because it doesn't require me at all. It doesn't require any central organising. It doesn't require any payment of anything. The whole thing, all of the material is free that we're sending around. I think Sydney and Permaculture, Central Coast are doing exactly the same thing. And so hopefully the Adelaide group will keep it going on an annual basis, which is probably the hardest thing for setting up an edible garden trail, is keeping it going, so having a video available is fantastic. In fact, the Sydney Edible Garden Trail got caught up with COVID, and their first trail, I think it was the first one, was slaughtered by COVID, and they did the whole thing on video. And I think Costa, who's gone now, Costa did a lot of that, covered a lot of that as well. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And if anyone does want to look at, I know if you type that into a search, Lockie Mackenzie's garden is featured, so we all love Lockie.
Can confirm we do love Lockie. Is there anyone else?
Can I just
Yes, of
add,
course,
because
yeah.
I rushed through my super exciting thing, and I had a whole lot of slides to share with you, but I wanted to squeeze it in. But if you are thinking of setting up an edible garden trail, I'd like to see edible garden trails in every community in Australia, and then I'd like to see it go overseas. It's already gone to New Zealand and the United States, but the more people that put their stuff on our little website, the easier it's going to be for other communities to start it. So it can be a small town community, or you can join the one in your own city, like if you're in Adelaide, there's one already up and running, and just get in touch with the organisers, or start your own. If I can start a little one, Mrs. Nobody in the Blue Mountains, I think anybody can.
Yeah, please give a huge clap for these amazing presenters and their talks. I'd also like to give a big shout out to Tim, who's been our sound, video, he's done everything this weekend. He's pretty much soloed it, which is a lot. And it's been a huge job, and he's done really well, because there's many platforms and things that come up on here. And if you're at the Walter Jen, that talk yesterday with the Zoom cutting out and the finger, and all of us improvising on the spot. Yeah, so he's on his feet all the time. Well, he's actually sitting down, but he's on his feet all the time keeping up with it. So yeah, if you could just give him a big round of applause. And this is the last day of the convergence. Don't be sad that it's over, be glad that it happened. Everyone on the committee might be the other way around because it's been crazy, but it's been amazing. So yeah, me, Kim, thanking you all from the committee for coming, and hopefully whoever takes this on next time has the same experience that we've had, because it's been amazing and crazy, and yeah, we've gotten a lot of support from everyone. So yeah, thanks everyone. Looks like we're on time, which is also unheard of. Yeah, and thanks again to these three.